I hoard wood, and today I'm going to turn a pile of scraps into a new coffee table that fits the modern decor in my home. It will be about 2 by 4 feet, have a plywood base, a chevron pattern top, brushed gold legs to match the kitchen hardware, and a few pops of green and gold resin in the top to link the living room with the kitchen. Stay with me to see how I did it and if you might use your scraps in a similar way. This is the pile I'm starting with. It's mostly maple, hickory, and end grain plywood. And after several dozen fussy cuts with oddly angled pieces of wood, here are 140 1-inch strips. If I arrange them carefully, they would cover my 22 by 48 inch base with a few left over. My pile is 40% hickory, 40% maple, and 20% fancy plywood. Some strips are short, only 6 inches, and others are over 24. I'll need to do some thinking and math to determine the best way to use the shorter pieces before cutting the longer ones up. After planning, this is what I settled on. My top will be divided into 4 sections, 2 wider and 2 narrower. Here we can see a wider one. While these strips are 13 inches long, when set at an angle, it only actually covers about 9 inches of width, hence the need for multiple sections. Now before I nail this together, I'm going to select 7 strips from here and cut a narrow channel in each, which later I will fill with either green or goldish resin to match the table legs, as well as the hardware in my kitchen. Not certain of the best way to do this, I settled initially on nailing the strips together using the table saw fence as a straight edge. Then afterwards, I plan to cut a clean, angled edge. If you try to pick up this 4-foot section that is nailed together, it twists like a rack of ribs in your hands. So in order to cut a clean edge, I built a simple sled so I could slide it through the table saw safely, getting this flawless edge. Before attaching my long floppy rack of wood to the base, I need a side for the table. I cut a dado in it, basically just a long, thick groove, so I can slide it on to my plywood base, making it stronger and stiffer when glued. Finally then, I glue my troublesome strip with clamps, ensuring it is snug against the base and the side. The middle table strip will be the thin one, so I laid out my shortest scraps and decided to cut the angles first to avoid having to use the sled again. This didn't work. Apparently my method was dependent on all the strips being equal thickness, which as scraps, they are not. Well, not every new idea works out. So I both glued and nailed these 100 small strips together with a sheet of wax paper underneath to ensure I didn't end up gluing it to the base. This did make using the table saw sled a lot easier since my wood was no longer floppy. My second strip is firmly attached, and I've laid out the pieces for my third strip. And it looks like I don't quite have enough coverage at either end there, so I'm going to cut just a few more from another scrap pile. It looks like I've got plenty of these, so I think I'm going to focus on some wider pieces of maple and maybe a few more plywood scraps as well. Having done this the hard way twice, I now get to just nail my strips together and glue them down in one efficient step. When done, I'll run the whole top through the table saw using the fence to get a second clean long edge. Afterwards, I'll slice off the 2 ragged shorter edges using a circular saw, carefully set against a clamped straight edge to ensure I get a straight cut and square corners. After attaching a couple more sides, which I deemed not interesting enough to show you, I began work on filling my grooves with colored resin. Recall these. I cut slots in 7 to 8 strips for each row and installed them spread out but randomly across the table. My plan is to add little pops of green and gold to the tabletop, bringing in the colors of the kitchen and adding some extra visual interest. There are 23 slots of differing widths across the table. Since about 300 pieces make up the top, less than 10% of them have any color in them, so the effect will be modest but still impactful, I think. I have quite a bit of resin experience. You are watching me make a table, but most of the time I make memorials, usually for pets, but sometimes people too. They're customized to your wood, color, text, and image preferences. Some people choose to have cremains infused as well. If you are looking for a quality custom memorial, made in America, I'm a great choice whether you lost your 4-legged family last week or years ago. The benefits of added color in a project are worth it, but one cost is time spent sanding. It took almost 2 hours to get all the resin overpour off and flatten the top. Most of that was a 5-inch disc sander with 120 grit, but I also did a couple of passes in my drum sander to ensure the top was truly flat. At this point, I took a couple of days to work on this botanical desk for my wife, as both projects would be finished the same way, and it's more convenient to work with finish all at once. Scraps from this desk were part of my materials for this project. If you'd like to see more about that one, search for Botanical Desk. It's time for finishing. I'm using Rubio Monocoat, and despite its name, people do typically apply 2 coats. It's an oil-wax hybrid finish, and some may argue a bit of a risk for a table that will get daily use. The classic choice would be polyurethane for durability, but that's one reason I'm trying Rubio for this. I want to see how it holds up with plates, glasses, food, and the occasional dog paw on it. It is a finish that gets rubbed in with a non-woven pad. A white Scotch-Brite is what I'm using, then buffed off after a few minutes so the wood soaks up what it wants, but no extra is left on the surface, and it only smells a bit. Please like and subscribe for more content like this that skews to the creative and colorful side of woodworking. The finished table. The variation in the scrap wood adds character, and the amount of green resin I used was just right. And what of the cost? I feel like this subject is frequently ignored, and I think I understand why. In a bougie store downtown, this could be $1,200. A price like that is both totally justified and also outrageous. From the outrageous perspective, this was made from scraps of wood, nails, a half bottle of glue, not much resin, sandpaper, and some hairpin legs from Ohio. It's no more than $150 worth of materials. But it also takes many hours of labor, more wood skills than you think, and several grand in tools. Let me know in the comments what price you'd expect on it in your downtown. Thanks for watching.